really properly welcome the chat. So let me just my dear sound engraver was first, and Team Ghost Planet is here. Frank Skiaka. Um, I saw Louis Pablo Selt. Welcome, sir. Zect Xtad the fifth or V. Don't know how to pronounce that. Furry old dog with the cat picture. Love that. And Daniel, and I got more people watching. So great to see everybody there. Let me set this up a little bit more than I did, and then I want to get your initial reactions there a little bit more. I'll just want to get the intro. So this is by Timothy Zahn. It takes place. This is in between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, and it does take place after Scoundrels. Now, we did a book study of Scoundrels, but Timothy Zahn wrote Scoundrels after he wrote Allegiance. So Allegiance doesn't necessarily reference anything that happened in Scoundrels, but with the character arc of Han, it is consistent. So this is a Han who's saved Luke and everything at Yavin there and everything, but then he left the alliance to go and try to make good on his money that he owed Jabba. But in the space of Scoundrels, if you were with us that book study, Jabba ups the bounty to a point where there's just no way Han's going to pay it. He wants Han's blood. That's pretty obvious. So Han does go back to the rebellion. He's drawn to Leia. He's got these feelings for her. He's trying to reconcile, trying to figure out and everything. And yet he's still not all in on like, I am the rebels, I'm the alliance's man. He's still not all in on the allegiance there. He's just kind of being there. As he says, Chewie wants to be there with them because of what the Empire's done to his people. Han, or Leia and Luke obviously want to be there. And this is where Han is right now. But that's the thing. This book is called Allegiance, and all of our main characters are exploring what their allegiances are and who they're to. And that's a good overall theme of this book. So having given that sort of premise there, general reactions just to the first 4 chapters, Al?
Quite interesting. Kind of wondering where the rogue stormtroopers, the pseudo Bad Batch, are going to be going. Because someone said that, and I'm like, huh.
I said that, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds pretty much like the premise, something like that.
All of this.
I will say it is always wonderful to meet our heroes in the way they should be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little squeamy seeing Luke fawn all over Leia right now.
But it's not like it's no more than he does in like the first movie or second at the beginning.
But it's but now it's got a more creep factor right now.
Yeah. It is an interesting place to meet them because there's right after that episode 4, and because of that, Luke isn't. We're used to like the Thrawn trilogy, or by the time Return of the Jedi, he's the Jedi. He's calling the shots and doing things. At this point, Luke's still very inexperienced. His learnings in the Force are still helping them quite a bit. We'll see that happen in the book. But when he's paired with Han, Han's the experienced one. Han's the one that kind of calls the shots and knows more about what's going on. He's got a little more world street smarts, in terms, or space smarts, I guess you'd say that, so it's an interesting place there to find them. And you're right. I am going to talk about, I do believe that the idea of this book was a basis for the Bad Batch, just as I believe, the Mandalorian is basically a ripoff of Jango Fett's backstory that you see in the Bounty Hunter game and so forth. I mean, they really just took a lot of that, from the EU and just put their own coatings on it and stuff. So, of course, you don't have
it's kind of interesting to see a character that will matter much more in the future, kind of just pop up.
Yeah.
And, because we know now that where her allegiance is and will be for quite a while.
There's
not going to be any little, maybe I know, maybe he's not so bad. No, she's going to hate him for quite a while yet.
Yeah, Mara Jade he's talking about, who's a great character in here as well. So we do have 3 different stories that we bounce in between, which are all interrelated to a certain point. And one is Luke, Han, and Leia, what they're doing in this book. We have this group of stormtroopers that we're going to meet here in a few moments. And then we have Mara Jade. And their stories, we bounce back and forth between their stories, and they do interlap to a certain point. But chapter 1, Timothy Zahn has said that all of his Star Wars books, he likes to start them out with a Imperial ship first, because that's how the first 3 movies started out, with the Imperial ship flying in. So the Thrawn trilogy began like that. Chapter 1 here starts like the Imperial Star Destroyer Reprisal slips silently through the blackness of space, preparing itself for action against the rebel forces threatening to tear the galaxy apart.
You can hear John Williams in your head.
Yes,
dun,
you
dun,
can.
Dun, dun.
Absolutely. And our opening scene here is with Han and Luke and Chewie, and we find that they are helping to relocate a rebel base because the Empire's coming to basically blow it apart. So they've gotten advanced knowledge about this. Now, when Han and Chewie get there, there are some pirates also making trouble in the space, and then the Empire shows up. And this is Han's quick thinking. Han and Chewie. Chewie has the idea first. Yeah.
This was brilliant strategy, by the way.
Yeah. So Han gets there. The Millennium Falcon arrives there with Han, Luke, and Chewie just in time. The pirates are causing some trouble with other ships. Han has got, he's just left the planet with the crew, and they're turned back in like they're looking at the planet because they're trying to face these pirates and whatnot. And Luke goes to man the guns, and then they see the Empire ship. Well, it's Chewie who decides to turn the ship back around and face the planet. And Han realizes what he's doing, so that's a great idea. And all of a sudden, he puts out on the radio to the planet, Teardrop is called, like defenses, mayday, we're asking for help. And the Empire, seeing that their weapons aren't loaded and that they're asking for help from the planet, like, what is your position? And then he says, oh, we're a medical aid ship, I think he says, and
medical mercy team from Bristol.
Yeah, from Bristol. And the pirates have started firing on us. What do we do? And the Empire's like, we got this. And the Empire takes care of the pirates because they would. And then the Empire says, now you need to leave because this planet's under our, barricade or whatever, because we're going to, go get the rebels. So, it's pretty wise and a nifty little trick. And Luke's impressed by it. Luke says, I can't believe they bought that. And Han says, well, of course they buy it. They're here to kill rebels, not to, search ships. And we were faced, look, we're going into the planet. So, they had no way of knowing, and so. And you stop me, Al, as I'm going through these if you want to say anything about these sections. We do, in the chapters themselves, we do skip, we have that little spacing and we'll jump to some other characters. So we do meet our stormtroopers here as well. Specifically, we meet one by the name of Larone, who's a stormtrooper. And it's really cool kind of getting the story of stormtroopers because that's one of the coolest aspects of Clone Wars. We got to see the experience of the clones themselves. Now, they were a unique experience grown for that specific army. But stormtroopers in these days, that we're in now here, they had to sign up at some point. Why would they? Why would they do that? Why would they give their lives and for such a thing as the Empire? So it's an interesting question to explore. And we see that when we get a little bit of Larone's backstory. He was on this backwater planet. The Empire had come in and taken care of the pirates there. So they're like the heroes, right? The Empire coming in and he jumps at the chance to sign up when he can. He becomes a stormtrooper. He's very proud of himself. 6 years, everything was all good. He'd served with all his heart and strength, fighting against the forces of evil and chaos that threatened to destroy the Emperor Palpatine's new order. And he'd served with distinction, or so at least his commanders had thought. For Larone himself, awards and citations meant nothing. He was wearing the white armor and he was making a difference. That was what mattered. But then had come Elris, where an entire town had had to stand out in the pouring rain for 6 hours while their identities were double and triple checked. After that had come Bumprel, and all the terrible civilian casualties as they'd fought to root out a rebel cell. And then had come Alderaan. Larone shifted uncomfortably on the bench. The details still weren't entirely clear, but the official reports all agreed that the planet had been a center of rebel strength and that it had been destroyed only when it defied in order to surrender the traitors. Larone certainly couldn't fault the motivation. The rebels were growing ever stronger, ever bolder, ever more dangerous. They had to be stopped before they destroyed everything the Empire had created and dragged the galaxy back into more of the chaos of the Clone Wars era. But surely the entire planet couldn't have been on the rebels' side, could it? And then the quiet rumors had started. Some said the Alderaanians hadn't been a rebel base at all, that its destruction is nothing more than a field test of the Emperor's new Death Star. Others whispered that Grand Moff Tarkin, the Death Star's borderline psychotic commander, had destroyed all those billions of people over a personal grudge between him and Bail Organa. But it almost didn't matter what the reason was. The bottom line was that the response had been light years beyond any provocation the rebels could possibly have put together. Something was happening to the empire that Lerone had served so long and so well. Something terrible. And Lerone himself was stuck right in the middle of it. So we get the precarious place that some stormtroopers could be in. You know, they join because they really think they're making a difference.
Right.
They're rooting out pirates and stuff like that. The rebels are painted as the troublemakers. They're going to put us back in civil war. We got to get rid of these, nonconformist troublemakers. And yet he starts to see the Empire's true colors shine through, and it's a difficult thing to realize. So, as he says there, well, we don't need to go the rebel route. We don't need to, go ruining what we've got here, because the Empire does stand for some good things, but still, what's up with this? What's up with this? The shine's coming off of it a little bit,
Yeah, I got a very Vietnam type vibe a little bit when I was reading it and thinking about it.
Yeah.
I can't remember. There was the massacre in Vietnam that was like just caused a ton of outrage, and I kind of got that with what someone in the Empire, just your normal average citizen trying to make a credit and live a life, suddenly here's about an entire planet just blown away.
Yeah. Now we're also introduced to ISB in the Empire here, which is the Imperial Security Bureau, which is kind of like the secret police, or something like that, and Hitler or something like KGB. Yeah. They're the the really ones you have to worry about. Now they've come in and they're kind of taking over this up to root out these rebels, with this. And so Lerone and his friends here, the stormtroopers, are seeing the ISB come in, and they know ISB's trouble. They know that they're not really noble, and they're a little worried about this. When they go down on the planet, and they have this op getting ready to root out the rebels there. We meet another stormtrooper by the name of Brightwater, and he is a scout trooper, on the speeder bikes and stuff like that. And he notices that nobody's out and about. This place is pretty abandoned. So he starts to try to call that in, and the ISB commanders just don't shut up, get back in line, don't even say anything. And then he hears a bunch of gunfire, screams and stuff like that happening from in town. And then he realizes that that's all he hears is the stormtroopers' gunfire. Those are their models of blasters, not the usual ragtag, combination of rebels. And he starts to realize that this is more like a massacre of pretty much civilians rather than any actual rebels being brought to justice, so to speak. But he can't say anything. Every time he tries to say something or whatever, he's silenced immediately. So another problem here as we end the chapter.
Yeah, because that's a part, and I kind of like how it goes, is where was the cacophonous mix of military, sporting, and self-defense weaponry that was practically the trademark of the Rebel Alliance? And then with a sudden chill, he understood.
Yeah. Because this is the planet that Han and Luke just took the last of the rebels out of.
Mm-hmm.
This is the same place, so we're crossing over the same territories here in terms of the plot too. Chapter 2 starts, and we get Lerone again, or the first stormtrooper we're introduced to there, and he goes to see not Brightwater, but another stormtrooper sharpshooter by the name of Graves, and he talks to Grave about it, and Grave says, yeah, he pretty much saw the same thing as a sharpshooter. He's up on the roof, with the scopes and everything, so he can see a little bit more. And yeah, he sees it too. But Graves like, shut up, don't say anything. You'll be brought before the ISB, for trial. That's not what you showed up here for, So they're all in this sort of unease about this. Then the next little break in chapter 2 gives us we jump scenes again, and we're with Miss Mara Jade, the Emperor's hand at this point. And she has been brought seemingly to an unrelated place here, to Moff Glovestok's palace, glittering with elaborate lighting. So she's playing a part here. She's going to spy on this Moff Glovestok for the Emperor. He thinks that Glovestok is skimming, the taxes, and is, being a traitor to the Empire, basically, taking profits for himself and whatnot. So Mara's there disguised as this countess to investigate it, Countess Claria. And she does meet, there's this interesting moment where she meets this General Derian, is an older man, a general in the Empire, who is there with, and I think it's Glovestok's nephew, is Mink Bolus, this young man. And Mara, for her ruse there, she's got to pretend to be drunk, like too drunk to stand, so she's has to go lay down. And the young nephew's like, "Here, I'll take you to go lay down." Girl that's about to be totally drunk and without her inhibitions. And General Deary and the older man's like, "Oh, how about I take her?" And takes her to a nice room and shuts her in. And he says, "You're what, 18?" He says, "My niece would be your age, and I want you, protected in your honor and everything." So an upstanding man, even though he's an imperial general. But locks her in this room, and that's when she can go get her plan. She's got all this like bag and gear and everything, or she can kind of go through the window and do some reconnaissance in the mansion. So,
you know what would have been really awesome?
What's that?
If that was Pelion instead of the other guy.
I don't know if there's
what a
anything
great way
already
to, like a young Pelion who was so nice to Mara Jade, and then I just think it would have been a neat little.
I know you would have liked that, Al.
I know Pelion rules, man. He's awesome. Love him.
Pelion lives. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't read Hand of Thrawn yet, so I don't know what happens to Pelion in the end. But yeah, he could have been around at this point, unless it's already established that he was elsewhere or something. So yeah. Now I don't really have much to say about the specifics of what she finds there. She does find some art pieces in Glovestok's safe that are marked. So these were stolen pieces of high art that were siphoned through another dealer or whatever, or black market dealer to get to Glovestoke. So it's enough to give her a hint of something.
Yeah, but, he's been taken off the top of the till, basically trying to bolster his own comfort, as it were.
Yeah. So she gets back to the room in time for General Deary to come and check on her, and she leaves, undiscovered with the new information that she's got for the Emperor, and we'll see her later report to the Emperor. But chapter 3, we rejoin our stormtroopers here. Marcross again, for example. And these stormtroopers, we've got at this point Marcross, the stormtrooper, the scout trooper, Larone, the one we met, Grave, who's the sharpshooter that Larone was talking to, and then Quiller. Quiller is the pilot, the stormtrooper who's a good pilot, and he's been with them before, in a couple areas, and they're all here watching, the ISB go through and do its thing. And as they're sitting there watching, they're in their civilian clothes, and one of the ISB majors or commanders or whatever comes up to them and starts giving them a hard time. Why are you in this restricted area? And they say, "Well, we're stormtroopers. We're allowed to be here. Why are you out of armor? Why are you out of armor?" And they're trying to explain to him that we've got. Go ahead.
Drelfin.
Yeah, Major Drelfin. They're trying to explain to him that we actually have permission, that, there's a little bit of a lax rule on that, here on the ship or whatever, but he's just not having it. This is just a typical, person who's overcompensating with a little bit of military power, trying to, lord it over and, make himself feel better by making others squirm. And these are stormtroopers. And he does find out Larone's name. And he says, "Wait a minute, you're Larone, you're, Daniel Larone, or whatever his first name is."
Derek.
Derek, yeah. He says, "You need to come with me then, because you've been reported." Because apparently at this teardrop op that they were all at, Larone was purposely missing his targets. He wasn't killing these civilians. He was purposefully missing, and he was reported for that. So Drelfin pulls his weapon on him and says, "Maybe I'll just kill you right here." He's ISB. He can get away with that kind of stuff, but it's not according to regulation. According to regulation, Larone should have a proper hearing or whatever, and it's kind of instinct. You correct me if I'm misrepresenting this or going over it too quickly, but Larone sees a blaster pointed at him. It's not according to regulation, so he kind of by instinct takes the blaster and disarms the guy.
Yeah,
and,
he basically just like punks him out.
Yeah,
like gets him and like gets his arm like behind him and like
Yeah, exactly.
This is a pencil pusher who's going against a hardened soldier. It ain't going to work well for him.
No. And in the process of this, getting the blaster from him and everything, Drelfin is shot. The blaster goes off and Drelfin's shot. So now these stormtroopers, Larone, Marcross the scout trooper, Graves the sharpshooter, and Quiller the pilot, are all sitting there with a murdered ISB major in front of them. Who's going to believe them? No one in the world would believe them. This is ISB person. Now, no one's around who sees them, but what are they going to do? Now, Larone says, "Well, I've got to leave." there's no way I'll do this. And the rest of them are starting to say, Marcross and whatnot are starting to say, no, we've all got to leave at this point, because they'll know that we were in this with you. They'll know that we didn't try to subdue you. We either take you in right now and report you or leave with you. So none of them, it's interesting, none of them are like, we've seen the light, we know the Empire's evil, so we're going to go AWOL. No, it's this incident that happens. They're getting uncomfortable with what the Empire's doing. They do want to fight for actual order and justice, but this incident happens. It kind of forces them to leave, because
it's a flashpoint kind of form.
If they were interrogated, because the Empire's interrogation tactics, are pretty severe, they would be able to find out that they actually did let Larone go and didn't, so they get into their minds somehow. So they really have no choice but to all flee together.
Larone's got to go, because everyone knows, even those who weren't there, that he was reported, and that's what Drelfin was dealing with. So, 1 + 1 equals a dead Drelfin.
Yeah.
On Larone, so he's got to run.
Exactly. And it's interesting, though, that you've got this group of them there, because they do make a pretty well-covered unit. You've got a pilot, Quiller, a sharpshooter, Grave, a scout trooper, Marcross, and then Larone, regular stormtrooper, who ends up kind of being the leader here because he's got the brains for it, So
not a bad batch of.
I was going to say, right? Kind of like Bad Batch. Didn't we have a sharpshooter and a guy who's good with tech? And, it's the Bad Batch totally ripped this off in a different context, obviously, with clone troopers and whatnot. But it's, they get their ideas from the EU. So they need to flee, and no one's seen them yet or anything. They hide the body, and they're asking Quiller, the pilot, well, which ship should we take? Because they're right there at the ISB hangar. All these ISB ships are there. And they've been talking about this one ship, the Sawantech, which looks like it's an older ship, or not quite a high tech or thing. But Quiller's smart enough about ships to know that they've really retrofitted this thing, or not retrofitted. They've really tricked it out. They've pimped this spaceship. It's got huge weapons, armor. It's stocked up to the gills inside with all kinds of stuff that they later find out. So they agree to take that. Now they do kind of bluff their way through, because they're in the Sawantech is in the Imperial Destroyer, which is in hyperspace. So they have to pretend that they're Drelfin and radio and say, stop, we're getting out now. And there's like, well, we've got no clearance about this. That's right, you have no clearance, and you'll say nothing of it too. So they kind of bluff they pull the ISB card, because that's something ISB would do. So it's a fun little trick of their own there.
It's like, I see no ship departures on my schedule. Of course you don't.
And you'll say nothing. So they get out of there. Now they do find tons of blasters and weapons. They find tons of armor, because they're going through and searching the ship, making sure there's no stowaways or anybody sleeping, taking a nap on the ship or something as they go. And they find that they're pretty set. There's speeder bikes, there's everything like that. So they've got this amazing ship. They're this group of renegades. Now they're figuring, where do we go? They want to get to at least someplace shortly to stock up, as much as they can, and then they'll figure out where they're going. Now, one of them, Marcross, I just want to make sure it is Marcross, is arguing that they should go to the shell, what's it called? The sector, Shelsha sector. He says, we really should check out Shelsha sector. Doesn't say why, but they're like, Shelsha sector, that's, there's going to be a pretty big presence there. He said, well, let's just go stock up first, and then we'll figure out where we're going. And that brings us to the... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, because they think about, like, do we try hut space? Nope, not a good idea.
Yeah. Which brings us to the end of chapter 3. So we got our last chapter for tonight here coming up. And this bumps us back with Mara Jade reporting to Emperor Palpatine. And what's interesting here is, so we've looked at Han's allegiances. Where are Han's allegiances? They're to his friends, but he's not really sure if he wants to throw in with this alliance yet. The stormtroopers, their allegiances, well, to the Empire, but now they're realizing the Empire is not really what they thought it was, but they're still loyal to what they think it should be, and now they're having to be forced out. So their allegiances are all over the place in question. Mara's allegiance, well, she, as we've already established with the Thrawn trilogy, she's dearly 100% loyal to Palpatine because she thinks he's kind of like a father figure to her. And when you see him, you see Palpatine's dealings with her a little bit in this scene, which are kind of he extends his hand, or whenever he praises her, there's just this sort of wash of good feeling over her. So you can see him kind of manipulating her a little bit through the Force, as you see that. And she's like a kid of 18, at this point, learning the Force, learning, as far as she does know, things to do in the Force. And the Emperor likes the information she brought, so he's going to Glovestokes, going to get the axe. She does plead for General Dirian. She says he's one person that's innocent there. If you would, bring him aboard, and Emperor says, "Oh, sure, whatever, my child,"
But she makes the great argument, and she says, "Oh, well, the Emperor, he's like, you believe him to be innocent of Glovestokes treason?" And she goes, "I'm certain of it. He's also an honest and honorable man. I don't wish to see the Empire deprived of his service."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's like, whoo, okay.
Mm-hmm. So Mara's clearly thinks that the Empire is this great and noble thing as well. Even thinks that Palpatine is this great and noble man, which that's not hard for us to believe because we've seen in the prequels how he can, manipulate and stuff. But she does say, so we get her new mission here. When Emperor says, "Thank you, you've done your part, now we'll handle it from here," she does say, she says that unless there's something more urgent pending, I'd like permission to do an investigation of the 6 artworks I found in Glovestokes' safe. The ones I examined appear to be from a batch of 10 that were stolen from a gallery 5 years ago during the attack on a rebel cell in Critrino. Emperor's face darkened. So as well as being an embezzler, Glovestokes may as well be connected to a rebel alliance, or he may be a connection with the Imperial forces who carried out the attack, Mara pointed out. So she's sensing some sort of, through these stolen art goods, some sort of a link to the alliance or something like that. There's more at foot that she requests permission to further investigate, which he grants her. And even tells her, "You may go use my personal library for your research." And who should she come across there? Mr. Darth Vader. It is funny because she goes in at first and she's like, "Why is this abandoned? Why isn't anybody else here?" And then she sees Darth Vader in the corner. She's like, "Oh, I understand why no one else is here." And he himself is pretty cold with her. She's like, "Lord Vader, Emperor's hand." And he does say at one point they have this conversation when she's asking him about kind of her investigation a little bit. He says,
about seeking information on the rebels.
Yeah. Here's those. And so they're talking. A sense of coldness around him deepened. "There are sympathizers everywhere," he said, "with the rebels, as well as others who conspire to overthrow their superiors." Mara felt an unpleasant trickle run through her. "Lord Vader, rest assured that I have no intention—" "Good day, Emperor's hand." Vader cut her off with a swirl of black cloak. He stood, turning off the console as he did so. And then Mara's thinking here. "Thank you for your assistance, Lord Vader," Mara called after him. The other didn't reply. The sense of coldness fading as he departed. The door slid open. Mara took a deep breath, let it out in a weary sigh. What was he worried about anyway? Loyalty was, after all, one of the Emperor's greatest qualities. Loyalty to all who were loyal to him. How could Vader even think his master would push him aside for anyone else, especially for someone as young and inexperienced as Mara? Clearly, she has no clue who the Emperor is.
She does not know the history.
He's so loyal.
Yes, cut Darth Tyrannus' head off.
Exactly. Do it.
Do it.
And then she is able to kind of go into the computer there that Vader was on and see that he was actually searching for all entries or references on a Luke Skywalker. So, again, this is who he was kind of hunting down at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back. So it follows his proper trajectory there. And you start to sense that maybe he does kind of sense that maybe he's a son or something. You can kind of.
Well, with a name like Skywalker.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but we hear Palpatine confirm it in Empire Strikes Back. This young rebel is the son of Anakin Skywalker. So, I mean, maybe it's like Smith. Maybe there are a bunch of Skywalkers around.
Really?
I don't know. It's a different galaxy. Different galaxy, far, far away. Horizon Talker says, I have to wonder if Vader's cool attitude to Mara is because he knows the rule of two, or if he's just being Vader. Well, yeah, I mean, that's interesting. The rule of two is a thing. And yet, if you've read Darth Plagueis, you know that for a while now, both Plagueis and Palpatine have played with having at least other people to work within the Force and kind of, run errands and whatnot. I mean, Darth Maul started as that before he became a proper apprentice.
Kind of like attack dogs. They're not.
Yeah.
They do their job. They're good at it, and they just want a little pet now and then.
We then jump to so Mara's got her mission there, and then we jump to Han again. Han, Leia, and Luke Han, Leia, Luke, and Chewie as they're back to the Alliance. Han meets Mon Mothma for the first time. It looks like face to face at this point, and she has another mission for them. Another mission. And I'm going to get the names wrong of the people here. But it's interesting looking in Han's mind here, because Leia's kind of being cold with him and stuff. So he's talking to Luke about it. Trouble, Luke asked behind him, because he just kind of had this little, standoff with Leia. Han turned to see the kid walking toward him. No more than usual, he said. Why? Leia looked like she was worried. Her Royal Highness is always worried, Han growled, annoyed in spite of himself. Ever since they'd pulled the princess off the Death Star, Luke had been mooning over her, and ever since Yavin, he'd fancied they had a kind of deep spiritual connection where he could sense her moods and feelings. Obviously, they do. Or maybe it was part of his whole Jedi Knight kick he'd gotten on. Sometimes it was hard for Han to figure out which part of Luke's personality was the most annoying. Still, the kid was mostly okay. Better than a lot of people Han had to deal with over the years. She's got a lot of responsibility, Luke reminded him quietly, and Alderaan wasn't all that long ago. Han grimaced. The kid was right, of course. Leia had been too busy right then to react much, but ever since Yavin, she'd had more than enough time for grief and horror of her world's destruction to start weighing in. And if it came to that, Luke had had a couple of recent kicks in the teeth too, what with the first losing his aunt and uncle, and then watching old man Kenobi get killed right in front of him. The least Han could do was cut them some slack, both of them. Yeah, I know, he said. By the way, our glorious Supreme Commander wants us in the command center when we give time. So I like that, you're seeing Han's heart. You're seeing, which is good writing, because it'd be so easy just to write Han as the same kind of, I'm out for my own stuff, heavy that we saw him in the first movie. But he evolved past that by the end of the first movie. So you've got to take that continuity into account. And we see Zahn doing that quite nicely here.
You see the ice melting. The crack in the veneer kind of.
Yeah, he's nowhere near what we're going to see him in the Thrawn trilogy, obviously, but yeah, we see the progress happening. So we do, they meet General Riken and Mon Mothma, and they get the mission that they are there for. Now they're sending Leia to go to the Shelsha sector. Remember Shelsha sector? Because a senator there, Shiv Kyrie, has this proposition that he wants to propose to them, and there's some issues with it. Some other people don't like it, but they need a higher standing in the culture person to go be the ambassador for this to possibly all work together. And it's gotten to the point where they might have to just write off Shelsha sector as a possible rebel stronghold, because it's just like there's not enough people there. There's not enough for them to really expand their resources there. So if this works out, it could really save their presence in the Shelsha sector. So they're sending Leia, and they want Han and Luke to go as well for protection for her, to kind of help navigate the smugglers and stuff like that, as Han could do. Did I get that right? Do you want to add any more specifics to that, or is that the general gist?
That's the general gist. Yeah, it's like there's like this social system with the Adarians, I think.
Yeah.
And she and Leia being the diplomatic person. She's got the political savvy that they need to kind of break through that.
And we'll find later that she's got the status. She's got the high status that they would appreciate and respect. Yeah.
And also, I like the fact they got General Riken on here. I mean, like a name from the original film, and it's just nice to see him still around.
Yeah. We do get a little bit. I'm going to read a little bit at the end of the chapter here, just kind of see where Han and Leia and Luke, how they're standing here. Leia caught up with Han because Han's been kind of rude at this meeting. He's agreed to do it, but he's been a little rude. Leia caught up with Han at the Falcon just as the techs were carting off the last of the teardrop equipment. Han, she greeted him gravely. What do you think? He said. She looked at Han and looked at Leia. Your worshipfulness, he countered, inclining his head to her. With an effort, she bit down on the retort that she wanted to come out. Why did he do that? He knew she hated that kind of sarcasm. Or maybe that was why he did it. You were a little abrupt in there, she said, instead, and disrespectful. Hans' lip twitched. I didn't mean it that way, he said. I don't disrespect them. Well, not Riken, anyway. I've seen enough bad officers to know a good one when I see him. So again, you're seeing Hans. There's more to him than just I'm a, gruff exterior rogue. Well, if it wasn't disrespect, it was a pretty good imitation, Leia said. Han turned his back on her and started fiddling with a piece of equipment on the Falcon's underside. I just don't like politics, he said over his shoulder. This isn't about politics, Han, she said. This is about survival against... Of course it's about politics, he interrupted, turning back to glare at her. It's always about politics. One rebel leader pushes to get what he wants, the other leaders try to keep him from grabbing all the credit, and you and Mon Mothma and Riken try to soothe everyone's ruffled feathers. That's not survival, princess, that's politics. Is that what's bothering you? Leia asked, stiffly, rapidly, through his tirade as she hunted for clues. You're not getting enough credit? Of course I'm getting enough credit, he said. Don't you remember the shiny medal you hung around my neck? Leia felt her cheeks burning. My apologies, Captain Solo, she ground out with more than acid than she recently meant. I'm just trying to understand you. For the briefest fraction of a second, she thought she saw something almost vulnerable in his eyes, but the moment passed and the mask of cynical indifference dropped back into place. Don't bother, he advised. Even if you did, you wouldn't believe it. He turned away again, his hands and eyes pretending to busy themselves with the random bits of the Falcon's equipment. Leia remained there. She was for a few seconds until it was clear the conversation was over. Spinning around, she strode back across the hangar floor, her cheeks still warm. Never in her life had she met a man whose strength she so admired while at the same time wanting to strangle him with her bare hands. It's just like recipe for romance there. Luke was waiting just outside the hangar door. Anything? He asked. Just the usual bluster, Leia said with a sigh. Maybe you can get something out of him. Luke's eyes flicked over her shoulder. Probably better to wait until he cools down. I just wish I knew what had stirred him up in the first place, Leia said. He talked about politics, but I know that's not the whole story. Meanwhile, we have to get to the Shelsha sector, Luke said. I hope General Riken's got a backup plan for transport. So, they're talking about that, but you're starting to see something's going on in Han that we're going to see kind of slowly. This is his character progression within this book.
Mm-hmm.
Resolving himself up to the point of Empire Strikes Back. I think there are some other stories that take place between this and Empire, but his character arc's pretty much, set there. So it's a really fascinating intro to the book. We've set up our three different camps, or three different stories that we're following. They're all interlinked around the Shelsha sector, and which is where Mara's going. And
all our roads are leading to the Shelsha sector,
and all these different parties are dealing with questions of their allegiance. So a good theme set up, really good writing.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, Owen Lister. Owen Lister says he's he doesn't like politics either.
Well, few do anymore.
Yep. So in terms of what to read next time, let me see. We're going to get through this pretty quickly, but I don't want to bite off too much at the same time because each chapter does bob and weave between a lot of different characters. I think, what about reading the next 3 chapters up through chapter 7, 5, 6, and 7? That's about the same amount of pages. Maybe a little slightly less. I don't know. Let me see how long chapter 8 is.
Let's see. It's 59.
We could do chapter 8. Yeah.
Okay. So through chapter 8?
Yeah, 5 through 8. And
I won.
If it turns out that it's too much to bite off, then we'll save some of it for the next week. But we'll get through this relatively quickly. So so next 4 chapters for next week.
4 and 4. Yeah, 4 and 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
it's a good number to do.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So I know that you reminded us of what was going on with you, Al, on the Catholic Bible Geek channel the other night with Lord of the Rings, but we have many people watch this who don't watch that. So you want to remind everybody what your channel's up to right now?
Yes. This Saturday, it is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, take 2.
Yeah. Al doesn't watch this.
On my channel, Big Al Presents. Finally do that, and I'm also doing the following weekend and we're going to be doing the 7 Faces of Dr. Lo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So a great couple of 60s, early 70s fantasy films that really helped in my formative years to give me an appreciation for the fantastical mysteries of the universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good movies too. Good movies, definitely.
Yes, very, very good movies.
Yeah, that'll be fun. And yeah, I did have a little pre-show that I'll try and cut out and maybe make 2 videos out of. Probably it's about enough for it, I think. So we'll see how that goes. But I am thinking the current plan. I'm not setting it in stone, but the current plan is on Saturday night. What time is your rewatch start, Al?
10.
This would be much earlier. This would be like maybe around 7:38. I might do a Ghostbusters video game playthrough. The the most recent Ghostbusters video game from some years ago, which is basically Ghostbusters 3, that we never got with all the original cast and everything. I've done a playthrough a little bit of it before, but I never really finished it. So I want to try to, if I can, I'd like to finish it before Afterlife comes out the next weekend. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah. So,
and also dropped a video last night on YouTube. My Christmas video.
I haven't watched that yet, but Sound Engraver today told me, she said he looks so happy talking about the Christmas movies and everything. So
yeah, it was nice. I will definitely say I got you don't have the same. I don't have the same movie maker I'm used to, so I got to work with a new program. I use something else, but now I finally found where the new one is, so I have to try. It's going to take a while, so I don't know how long it's going to be till another video. So I gotta work on it, see how it goes.
Yeah. So,
but yes, I enjoyed talking about the Christmas movies. That is always a lot of fun for me.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this, cut this off now because I am tired. But thank you guys for hanging out with us. Thanks for good to see you, Owen Lister, and a couple of people I haven't seen in a little while. Pun, welcome to you as well. Glad to see you were here. And so we'll be back for Thursday for continuing through this. And this is what we're doing. We're continuing keeping the EU alive. With book studies on this channel. And we are going to eventually try to make it up to the Hand of Thrawn duology and beyond, but it takes a while, so we'll see what we can do. Sound Engraver reminded me, her streams on Monday night, they're at 9 p.m. now. She had been doing 9:30. She changed to 9 p.m. She's got really cool topics. So check out Sound Engraver's channel there for some excellent talks about art and the history of art, the state of art today, and art in terms of, wide generals. And Ed Starr, welcome Ed Starr. Great to see you there as well. Good to have you.
And no, Owen Lister, I'm not doing every Hallmark Christmas movie.
He would if he could, but
just highlighted some of the ones I liked, and a couple that are on Netflix that I thought were cute. So
yeah. So all right, guys, thanks for watching. Until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the hero stories you love.
#Pillion lives.